My friends, have you ever noticed how we all want the sunshine, but we pray away the rain? We all want the rainbow, but we don't want the storm. We want the rose, but we don't want the thorns. We want a life full of smiles, but we don't want the tears. And yet, without the rain, there is no rainbow. Without the storm, there is no calm. Without the thorns, there is no rose. Without tears, there is no deep appreciation for joy. When we face hurt, our first reaction is often shock. Why is this happening to me? We feel as though something unfair has entered our lives, something that doesn't belong. But if we look closely, hurt is not a stranger that has barged in the party uninvited. It is part of the guest list of life. It has been there for every person before you, and it will be there for every person after you. A wise man once told me, hurt is not the interruption to life. Hurt is a part of life. Imagine if you bought a ticket for a movie and only wanted to watch the happy scenes. You'd miss half the film, and you'd never understand the happy moments fully because you didn't see the struggles that led there. Let's take a simple example from our everyday life, a seed. Before it becomes a plant, it must be buried underground, in darkness, cut off from the sunlight. It may feel like the end for that little seed, but in reality, it is the beginning. The soil pushes against it, the pressure builds, and slowly it breaks open. That breaking is uncomfortable, maybe even painful for the seed, but without it, there is no growth. Without that stage, there is no life above the ground. Hurt in our life is often that breaking open moment. It feels unfair, unwanted, and painful, but many times it is preparing us for a greater season of growth. Now, does that mean we should go around looking for hurt? No, we don't need to invite it. Life will send it to us in its own time. But when it comes, we should not think, this should never have happened. Instead, we can think, this too is part of my journey. Sometimes in life, we go through moments that feel so big, so heavy, so painful, that they seem to swallow up our entire existence. A breakup, a betrayal, a failure, a rejection, and suddenly we start believing that this moment is the story of our life. But my friends, it is not the whole story. It is only one chapter. Think about a book. When you pick it up and read one sad chapter, you don't close the book and throw it away, saying, this is a terrible story. You keep reading because you know the author has more to say. And in the same way, your life is not just that one event that hurt you. It is a long, unfolding story that still has many pages to be written. But when we are in pain, it is so easy to lose perspective. Imagine a child who gets a scratch on his knee while playing. At that moment, he screams, cries, and says, I will never walk again. We smile because we know he will heal, but to him, in that moment, it feels like the end of his world. That's exactly how we are with our emotional wounds. The pain makes it hard to see that there is life beyond this hurt. One man I met had been through a terrible business failure. He told me, for 2 years, I stopped trying anything new. Every time I thought about starting again, the memory of that failure came back and froze me. His mistake wasn't in failing. His mistake was in letting that one chapter define his entire book. The moment he realized that the failure was just a season, not a life sentence, he picked himself up, started again, and went on to succeed in a completely different field. If you think about the seasons of the year, winter can feel endless. The cold bites, the days are short, and the world looks lifeless. But no matter how long the winter lasts, spring always comes. The trees bloom again, the sun warms the earth, and the birds return. That's how life works. No chapter, no matter how dark, lasts forever. The problem is, we often pitch our tent in the middle of a storm instead of walking through it. We make a temporary season feel permanent by replaying it over and over in our minds. But your hurt is not the whole of you. It is not your identity. You are more than that failed relationship. You are more than that mistake you made. You are more than the person who walked away from you. Think about your favorite movie. Often, there's a scene where everything looks hopeless. The hero has lost the battle. The love story has ended. The dream is shattered. If you walked out of the theater at that point, you would never know the victory, the reunion, or the happy ending that was waiting just a few scenes away. But because you stay in your seat, you get to see the story turn. In the same way, life has plot twists we can't see yet, and just because you are in a sad chapter right now, doesn't mean joy isn't coming in the next one. Sometimes, the most beautiful chapters of our lives are born from the darkest ones. I remember a young woman who lost her job during a company downsizing. At first, she felt humiliated and hopeless. She told me she would cry every morning just thinking about what she had lost. But losing that job pushed her to apply for positions she had never considered before. Within months, she found a role that not only paid better, but also allowed her to do work she loved. She told me later, "What I thought was the worst chapter of my life became the turning point of my story." When we accept that one bad chapter is not the whole story, we give ourselves permission to hope again. We give ourselves permission to turn the page. Here's the truth: no single day, no single event, no single failure has the right to define the totality of who you are. Life is a tapestry woven with many threads: joy, pain, success, failure, love, loss. If you look only at the dark thread, you miss the beauty of the whole picture. You might be thinking, "But my hurt is too big. It's impossible to move past." I understand, and I'm not saying you should pretend it didn't happen. Acknowledge the pain, grieve if you must, but then remember this is not the end. You have more life to live, more experiences to have, more joy to feel. Think of a river. When it hits a rock, it doesn't stop flowing. It moves around it, over it, or sometimes even through it. The rock becomes part of the river's story, but it doesn't stop the journey to the ocean. Your hurt is a rock in the river of your life. It shapes your path, but it doesn't define your destination. So, my friends, the next time you feel stuck in a painful moment, imagine yourself holding a book, the book of your life. Remind yourself, "I am not done. This is not the last page. I will keep reading." And one day, when you look back, you will see how this chapter, painful as it was necessary to lead you to the next beautiful part of your story. When life hurts us, our natural instinct is to react. And let me tell you, my friends, reaction is like throwing fuel on a fire. It doesn't make things better, it makes them worse. Someone says something hurtful, and before we even think, words are flying out of our mouth. Someone betrays us, and without pausing, we make decisions in anger that we regret later. The problem with reaction is that it comes from the heat of the moment, not from the wisdom of reflection. It's like hitting send on an email before reading it twice. Once it's out there, you can't pull it back. Now, choosing to respond instead of react is not weakness, it's strength. It takes self-control to pause, breathe, and think before acting. And that pause is powerful. That pause is where wisdom lives. That pause is where you regain control of your life instead of handing it over to the person or situation that hurt you. Let me give you an example. Imagine you're driving and someone cuts you off. Your reaction might be to honk the horn aggressively, shout, maybe even speed up to teach them a lesson. But pause for a second. Will that make the situation better? Or could it turn into something far worse? Now imagine instead you take a deep breath. Remind yourself that maybe they are rushing to the hospital or dealing with something urgent, and you just let them go. You have chosen peace over chaos. That's the difference between reacting and responding. In life, we can't always control what comes our way, but we can always control what leaves us. And what leaves us, our words, our actions, our decisions, those are the things that shape our relationships, our reputation, and our future. Think about a bottle of water. If you shake it, water comes out. If you shake a bottle of soda, foam explodes everywhere. The shaking is life, problems, hurt, disappointment. What comes out of you depends on what's inside you. If you filled yourself with anger, bitterness, and grudges, then when life shakes you, that's what spills out. But if you filled yourself with patience, kindness, and perspective, then even when life shakes you hard, you respond with grace. I once met a man whose business partner cheated him out of a huge sum of money. Everyone expected him to explode with rage or take revenge. But instead, he quietly ended the partnership, walked away, and started fresh. I asked him why he didn't fight back, and he smiled and said, "If I spend my energy on revenge, I won't have energy left to rebuild. I choose my future over my anger." That's response over reaction. It's not that he didn't feel the pain, of course he did. But he didn't let the pain dictate his next step. You see, when we react, we let the hurt control us. When we respond, we take the driver's seat back from the pain. One practical way to move from reaction to response is to create what I call the sacred pause. Before you answer that hurtful text, before you shout back, before you slam the door, pause. Give it an hour, a day, or even a week if needed. In that space, you gain clarity. You give your emotions time to settle so your mind can speak. Think about a glass of muddy water. If you keep shaking it, it stays cloudy. But if you set it down and let it be, the dirt settles and the water clears. Your mind works the same way. Clarity comes when you allow the storm to settle before making a move. And here's the thing. Your reaction might feel good for a few seconds, but it often leaves damage that takes years to fix. A hurtful sentence can end a friendship. A rash decision can ruin an opportunity. But a measured, thoughtful response that can save relationships, open doors, and keep your dignity intact. Even in small, everyday moments, this choice matters. You come home tired, and your child spills juice on the floor. You can yell and ruin the mood for the rest of the evening, or you can calmly clean it up and move on. You're not ignoring the problem. You're just handling it without creating a bigger one. Choosing response over reaction doesn't just protect others from your temper. It protects you from your own regret. Because regret is heavy, it whispers, if only I had waited. If only I had thought before speaking. If only I had not burned that bridge. When you respond instead of react, you give yourself the gift of peace in the future. I once heard a story of a monk walking with his student. A man came up to them and shouted insults at the monk. The student, furious, asked, "Why didn't you say anything back? Why didn't you defend yourself?" The monk smiled and said, "If someone offers you a gift and you don't take it, who does it belong to?" The student replied, "It still belongs to the giver." The monk said, "Exactly. His anger is his gift. I don't have to accept it." That is the ultimate example of choosing response over reaction. So, my friends, the next time hurt comes knocking, and it will, remember that you can't always stop the knock, but you can decide whether you open the door with fury or with grace. You can react and let the hurt drive your choices, or you can respond and drive your life toward peace, wisdom, and strength. When you're hurt, the people around you can either be your medicine or your poison. And let me tell you, my friends, the difference between healing and staying wounded often comes down to who's sitting next to you when your heart is in pieces. Have you noticed how being around certain people lifts you up, even when you're at your lowest? And how being around others drains you so much that even when things are going fine, you start feeling heavy inside? That's the power of influence. When we are hurting, we are vulnerable. And vulnerability is like wet cement. Whatever lands on it leaves a mark. If you surround yourself with negative, bitter, or cynical people during those times, their words and attitudes sink into your heart, shaping your view of the situation and sometimes your whole life. But if you surround yourself with people who speak hope, wisdom, and truth, they help you set your feet back on solid ground. Imagine this. You've fallen and scraped your knee. You need someone to clean the wound, put on medicine, and bandage it so you can heal. But instead, imagine someone comes and keeps poking the wound, saying, "That looks bad. You might never walk properly again." That's what toxic people do to your emotional wounds. They keep pressing them, making them worse, instead of helping them heal. I met a young man once who had gone through a painful breakup. In the weeks after, his friends would sit with him every evening and trash talk his ex. At first, he felt supported. They were on his side. But after a while, he realized that every time he left those conversations, he felt angrier, not better. The more he stayed in that environment, the more stuck he became in his pain. Eventually, he started spending time with a mentor who helped him focus not on revenge, but on rebuilding himself. That's when his healing truly began. The right people don't just tell you what you want to hear. They tell you what you need to hear with love. They remind you of your worth when you forget it. They see the strength in you when you can't see it yourself. They don't feed the fire of your anger, they pour water on it. Think about a plant. If you put it in the shade and never water it, it will wither. But place it in sunlight, give it clean water, and it will grow strong again. In the same way, your soul needs the sunlight of encouragement and the water of wise words when you're hurt. Without it, you risk drying up inside. One of the biggest mistakes we make when we're hurt is isolating ourselves completely. Yes, there is a time for solitude to process your emotions. But healing is not a solo journey. You need people who will stand by you when the storm is raging. And not just any people, the right people. Look back at your life. The moments you've grown the most were probably not just because of what happened to you, but because of who walked with you through it. The voices you allow in your ear during a season of pain will shape the voice inside your head long after. There's an African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I'll add, if you want to heal, walk with those who help you see hope when all you see is hurt. Sometimes, surrounding yourself with the right people means making the hard choice to step back from the wrong people. This doesn't mean you hate them. It means you're choosing your healing over their drama. It means you recognize that your peace is too valuable to be sacrificed for someone else's negativity. I remember visiting a hospital and seeing a patient in recovery. They had a strict rule: no visitors with colds or flu were allowed near him. Why? Because his immune system was weak, and even a small infection could set back his recovery. Your emotional health works the same way. When you are healing from hurt, you cannot afford constant exposure to people whose words are toxic. You need people who help you recover, not people who make you relapse into pain. Sometimes those people are friends, sometimes they are family, and sometimes they are people you meet unexpectedly. A teacher, a mentor, a colleague. They may not always tell you what you want to hear, but they'll tell you what will help you grow. Even in the smallest moments, their presence matters. A simple text saying, "I'm thinking of you," can remind you you're not alone. A quiet walk with a friend can ease your heart without a single word. A coffee with someone who listens more than they talk can be more healing than any lecture. When you're surrounded by the right people, they won't let you drown in self-pity. They'll throw you a rope, remind you there's a shore, and swim alongside you until you're back on your feet. And when you stumble again, because life is full of stumbles, they'll be there to remind you that falling is not the end, and getting back up is always possible. So, my friends, when you are hurt, be intentional about who you let near your heart. Find those who lift you, challenge you, and inspire you to become better, not bitter. Choose the voices that bring healing, not harm, and in return be that person for someone else. Because the circle of kindness we create has the power to heal not just one person, but the world around us. When you are hurt, forgiveness often feels like the hardest thing in the world. In fact, it might feel unfair. Why should I forgive them? They don't deserve it. They didn't apologize. They didn't even acknowledge what they did. And you're right. Maybe they don't deserve it. But my friends, forgiveness is not about whether they deserve it. Forgiveness is about whether you deserve peace. Think about this. When you hold on to anger, resentment, and bitterness, who is carrying the weight? Not them. You are. It's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to suffer. You replay the moment in your head over and over until it becomes a soundtrack in your life. And slowly, that hurt begins to shape how you see yourself, others, and the world. I remember meeting a woman who had been deeply wronged in a business deal. For years, she talked about that betrayal as if it had happened yesterday. Every conversation somehow led back to that wound. One day, I asked her, "How much rent is that person paying to live in your mind?" She paused, then smiled sadly. "Too much. That's the thing. When you hold a grudge, you give free space in your heart to someone who doesn't even deserve to be there." Forgiveness is not saying what you did was okay. Forgiveness is saying what you did was wrong. But I refuse to let it control me anymore. It's choosing to release the grip the past has on your present. Let me give you a simple image. Imagine you're carrying a heavy bag of rocks. Each rock represents a hurt someone has caused you. At first, you can manage it. But over time, the bag feels heavier and it slows you down. Every step becomes harder. Then one day you realize you can put the bag down. You don't need to carry it anymore. That's forgiveness. It doesn't mean the rocks never existed. It means you're no longer dragging them through your life. Some people say, "I'll forgive when they apologize." But here's the reality. Sometimes the apology never comes. Sometimes the person who hurt you doesn't even realize the depth of your pain. Sometimes they've moved on while you're still stuck in that moment. Forgiveness is your way of saying, "I'm moving on too." It's like being in a prison cell with the door wide open, but refusing to leave because you're waiting for the guard to apologize for locking you in. My friend, the door is open. Walk out. Don't wait for their permission to be free. Now, I'm not saying forgiveness happens overnight. It's a process. Some hurts are deep and they take time to heal. Forgiveness doesn't mean you have to let that person back into your life in the same way. You can forgive and still set boundaries. You can forgive and still choose not to trust them again. Forgiveness is about cleaning the wound so it can heal, not about pretending the wound never happened. Think of a cut on your hand. If you don't clean it, infection will set in and the pain will spread. Bitterness works the same way. It starts in one part of your heart, but if left unchecked, it spreads into every area of your life, your relationships, your peace of mind, even your health. Studies have shown that holding on to resentment increases stress, raises blood pressure, and weakens the immune system. Forgiveness, on the other hand, has been linked to lower stress and greater overall happiness. It's not just good for your soul, it's good for your body. I once heard a man say, "Forgiveness is the fragrance that the violet sheds on the heel that has crushed it." That's not easy to do. But when you release that fragrance, you release yourself from the power of the hurt. And here's something important. Forgiveness is not always a one-time act. Sometimes you have to forgive the same hurt over and over, especially when the memories resurface. Each time you choose forgiveness, you lighten the load a little more until one day you realize it no longer weighs you down. It's also worth remembering that forgiveness is not just for big betrayals. In daily life, small irritations and misunderstandings pile up. If we don't forgive quickly, those small stones can turn into big boulders over time. Your spouse forgets to do something. Your colleague takes credit for your work. A friend cancels plans last minute. These moments may seem minor, but they test your ability to let go, Choosing forgiveness in small things makes it easier to choose forgiveness in big things. One of the most powerful examples I've seen was a man whose brother was killed in an accident caused by a drunk driver. At the court sentencing, the man stood up and told the driver, "I forgive you. I want you to know that my life is too short to be ruled by hatred. I choose peace." You could feel the entire courtroom shift in that moment. That kind of forgiveness doesn't just free the forgiver, it can awaken the humanity in others. So, my friends, if you are holding on to hurt today, ask yourself, what is it costing me? My joy, my sleep, my peace? And is it worth carrying one more day? The truth is, the person who hurt you may never realize the damage they caused, but you can choose not to let it damage you any longer. Forgive, not because they asked for it, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve to live without the chains of resentment. Forgive because your future is too precious to be held hostage by your past. Forgive because the longer you hold the pain, the more it holds you. And when you do, when you truly release that grip, you'll discover something beautiful. The hurt may still be part of your story, but it will no longer be the chapter that defines you. You will walk lighter, smile more easily, and breathe more freely. Because forgiveness, my friends, is the ultimate act of self-love. When you are hurt, gratitude may feel like the last thing on your mind. How can you be grateful when your heart is aching, when life has thrown you into a storm you never asked for? Yet, my friends, this is the paradox. Gratitude in the middle of pain doesn't ignore the hurt, it transforms it. You see, pain has a strange way of magnifying what's wrong while blinding us to what's still right. It's like walking into a room with 99 lit candles, but choosing to focus only on the one that went out. Gratitude is the practice of shifting your eyes from the darkness of that one candle to the light of the 99 that still shine. I met a man once who had lost his job unexpectedly. He was devastated. His identity, his stability, his confidence, all of it seemed tied to that job. For weeks, he focused only on what he had lost. One day, we sat down together and I asked, "What do you still have?" He looked at me confused. I repeated, "What do you still have?" Slowly, he began to list. "I still have my family. I still have my health. I still have my skills. I still have my faith." His voice grew steadier with each sentence. You could almost see the weight lifting off his shoulders. That's the power of gratitude. It doesn't erase the problem, but it changes the posture of your heart while you face it. Gratitude works like a lens. Without it, the pain looks bigger than it really is. With it, you start to see the full picture, the blessings you've been overlooking, the opportunities still in front of you, the love still surrounding you. Think about it. Every morning you wake up is a gift. The ability to breathe, to see, to walk, to speak. These are miracles we treat like background noise until something happens that reminds us not everyone gets to enjoy them. The truth is, gratitude is not about having everything you want. It's about recognizing the value of what you already have. Now, I'm not saying gratitude means pretending everything is perfect. No. It means you can acknowledge, yes, this hurts, but thank God, not everything is broken. Life will always have reasons to be upset, but it will also always have reasons to be grateful. The question is, Which list are you adding to more often? Sometimes, gratitude is easiest to find in small, ordinary moments. The laughter of a child, the comfort of a friend who listens without judgment, a warm cup of tea on a rainy afternoon, the beauty of the sunset painting the sky. These moments may not solve your problems, but they give you strength to face them. I once visited a village where the people had very little by material standards. Their houses were small, their income was barely enough to survive, yet their smiles were wide, and their hearts were full. When I asked them how they stayed so joyful, an elderly man said, "Because we don't count what we don't have, we count what we do have." That's wisdom we all need to remember. When you choose gratitude, you refuse to let pain be the only voice in your head. You let joy and hope speak too. And that inner shift can change everything. Studies in psychology even confirm this. People who regularly practice gratitude experience less stress, sleep better, and have stronger relationships. Why? Because gratitude changes your focus, and where your focus goes, your energy flows. Here's a small challenge you can try every night before you sleep. Write down 3 things you're grateful for. They don't have to be big. Some nights it might be, I'm grateful for the meal I ate, the phone call I had with a friend, and the fact that I made it through today. Other nights, it might be something deeper, like, I'm grateful for the lesson I learned from my struggle. Do this for 30 days and watch how your perspective shifts. When you focus on gratitude, something amazing happens. You begin to see blessings where you once saw burdens. You start to find meaning in the pain. You start to understand that even the toughest seasons can teach you something valuable. A friend of mine once went through a serious illness. It was a battle. But afterwards she told me, it made me grateful for every ordinary day before I took life for granted. Now, even a simple walk in the park feels like a celebration. Pain had deepened her gratitude, and gratitude had deepened her joy. Gratitude doesn't mean your hurt disappears, but it means your hurt doesn't consume you. It becomes one part of a bigger story, a story filled with moments of kindness, love, and beauty. So, my friends, even in your darkest hour, find one thing to be thankful for. Maybe it's the lesson the pain is teaching you. Maybe it's the people who stand beside you. Maybe it's simply the fact that you have breath in your lungs and a chance to start again tomorrow. Gratitude turns what we have into enough, and enough into abundance. It's not a denial of reality, it's a declaration that pain is not the whole reality. And when you start living with that mindset, you'll find that even the deepest wounds can become places where light enters your life. So today, if you're feeling hurt, pause for a moment. Look around. Count the blessings still within reach. Let them remind you that life, even with its pain, is still worth living with an open, thankful heart. Because gratitude, my friends, is the bridge that carries you from the valley of hurt to the mountain of healing. When we are hurt, the natural instinct is to hold on to the pain, replay the scene over and over in our minds, and keep that wound fresh. It feels like if we hold on to it, somehow justice will be served. But my friends, the truth is, holding on to resentment is like holding a hot coal in your hand, waiting to throw it at the person who hurt you. The longer you hold it, the more it burns you, not them. Forgiveness is not about saying what happened was okay. It's not about pretending the pain wasn't real. Forgiveness is about freeing yourself from the prison of bitterness so that you can live again. Because here's the reality: when you don't forgive, you give the one who hurt you free rent in your mind and heart. Every time you think about them, they steal a little more of your peace. And they don't even have to be there physically. They are living in your thoughts. I remember talking to a woman who had been betrayed by a close friend. Years had passed, yet her face would tighten and her voice would shake every time the friend's name came up. I asked her, "Do you realize this person still has power over you, even though they're no longer in your life?" That's when it hit her. Her unforgiveness was keeping her emotionally tied to someone who had already moved on. She was still carrying the weight of something they had long forgotten. Forgiveness, in many ways, is a gift you give yourself. It's like cutting the chain that's been tied around your ankle, keeping you from running freely toward your future. You're not saying the hurt didn't matter. You're saying your peace matters more. Think about a glass of water. Hold it for a minute. It's fine. Hold it for an hour. Your arm starts to ache. Hold it for a day. Your muscles go numb. The weight of the glass never changes, but the longer you hold it, the heavier it feels. That's exactly how it is with grudges. The longer you hold them, the heavier they become until they drain you completely. Some people struggle to forgive because they think it lets the other person win. But forgiveness is not about winning or losing. It's about refusing to let their actions define your life. When you forgive, you take back control. You choose to live free from their shadow. Now, let's be honest. Forgiveness is not always instant. It's a process. It might take days, months, even years. And that's okay. It's like healing a physical wound. Some are small scratches that heal overnight. Others are deep cuts that take time and care. The important thing is to start. Start by shifting your focus. Instead of replaying what they did, focus on what you can learn from it. Maybe it taught you to set better boundaries. Maybe it revealed who truly values you. Maybe it deepened your empathy for others who are hurting. Pain can be a teacher if you let it. I once met a man who forgave the driver who caused the accident that took his son's life. When I asked him how he did it, he said something I will never forget. I realized I could either spend the rest of my life chained to anger, or I could honor my son's memory by living with love. Forgiveness was the only way I could do that. His story reminded me that forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It changes the way you carry it. And sometimes, the person you most need to forgive is yourself. We all have moments we regret, words we shouldn't have said, actions we wish we could take back. But self-condemnation is just another prison. You have to learn to release yourself from it. Because you cannot move forward if you keep punishing yourself for yesterday's mistakes. Letting go doesn't mean the pain disappears overnight. It means you no longer let that pain dictate how you live today. You stop using it as the filter for every decision, every relationship, every opportunity. You stop looking backward so you can start walking forward. If you've ever seen a hot air balloon take off, you'll notice something. It doesn't rise until the ropes holding it down are released. Those ropes are like grudges. They keep you tied to the ground. Forgiveness is cutting those ropes so your heart can rise again. And here's something powerful. When you forgive, you don't just free yourself, you sometimes inspire others to do the same. Your decision to release bitterness might give someone else the courage to release theirs. You might never know how far the ripple of your forgiveness will reach. So, my friends, if you are feeling hurt right now, I want to tell you something that might be hard to hear. Holding on will not heal you. Carrying that resentment will not make the past better. It will only make the present worse. Choose to forgive, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve peace. It won't always be easy. You may have to wake up every morning and choose it again. But with every choice, you'll feel lighter. And one day, you'll wake up and realize the burden is gone. That's the day you'll know forgiveness didn't just set them free, it set you free too.